These are pictures taken by the Florida Highway Patrol of the wrecked SUV belonging to Tiger Woods. The final report out on the accident outside the golfer's Orlando area home.
We all know the story of the crash, but we don't know the story of the escape. Rumors said she was broken. Tabloids said Tiger Woods' ex-wife was hiding. But new photos from 2024 and 2025 reveal a truth so shocking, it makes the original scandal look like a footnote. You need to take a deep breath before you see what 15 years of silence has built.
The woman at the center of one of the most explosive scandals of the past decade, Tiger Woods' ex-wife, Elin Nordegren. She's kept a pretty low profile until now.
Before we talk about the breathtaking comeback Elin Nordegren made, let's look back at the night that shattered the dream she had fought so long to protect. The billion-dollar shattering. On Friday 27 November 2009, at 2:25 a.m., on a humid Florida night, the silence of the exclusive Isleworth community was shattered. Lying on the asphalt, surrounded by the debris of a Cadillac Escalade, was a man worth $1 billion. He was barefoot, bleeding from the mouth, and groggy from a potent cocktail of Vicodin and Ambien. To the neighbors peering through their blinds, he looked like a victim. But to the world, this was the first glimpse of the man behind the mask. For over a decade, Tiger Woods wasn't just a golfer. He was a carefully constructed corporate entity. He was the most marketable athlete on earth. A man whose discipline on the course was matched only by the ironclad wall of privacy he built around his life. He was a monument to perfection, a dedicated father, a loving husband, and a relentless champion. But on that Thanksgiving night, that image didn't just crack, it shattered. We were about to discover that the proud champion was, in reality, a deeply flawed individual leading a double life of staggering complexity. The crash outside his Isleworth mansion wasn't just a traffic accident, it was a release valve for years of suppressed secrets. To understand the crash, however, we have to rewind 7 days, to the moment the fuse was actually lit. Just 1 week prior, Tiger had been in Melbourne, clinching the Australian Masters. It was another trophy. But while the cameras saw a winner, the National Enquirer saw a target. The tabloids had been circling Woods for years, but his image was so pristine and his legal team so aggressive that rumors rarely stuck. This time was different. Reporters were on the ground in Melbourne. They had caught wind of a woman named Rachel Uchitel, a New York nightclub hostess, checking into the same hotel as Tiger. The pressure cooker began to whistle the moment he landed back in America. Tiger knew the story was coming. In a desperate attempt at damage control, he tried to shield his wife, Elin Nordegren, from the headlines. He told her the Enquirer was publishing lies, a fabrication to sell magazines. He was so persuasive and perhaps so desperate that he allegedly orchestrated a conference call between Elin and Uchitel. For 30 minutes, Uchitel lied to Elin, assuring her that there was no affair, that the rumors were baseless. For a brief moment, it seemed the golden boy had talked his way out of the bunker. Thanksgiving Day arrived with a thick tension hanging over the Woods household. Tiger went to the nearby clubhouse to play cards with friends, maintaining the routine of a man without a care in the world. He returned home late, took an Ambien to sleep, and drifted off in the master bedroom. It was a routine he likely had performed 100 times, but that night, the sedative would be his undoing. Elin didn't sleep. The seed of doubt, planted by the tabloids and watered by intuition, had taken root. While Tiger slept, heavily sedated, she picked up his cell phone. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a search for truth in a marriage that had suddenly become a question mark. She scrolled past the mundane logistics of a superstar's life until she found it. A smoking gun buried in his digital history. A text sent to Uchitel that read, You are the only one I've ever loved." Imagine the physical force of reading those words. It wasn't just a revelation of cheating, it was an erasure of history. For Elin, standing in the dark of her own bedroom, that sentence must have felt like a punch to the gut. The only one implied that her marriage, her sacrifices, and their children were part of a secondary reality. The shock likely gave way to a cold, paralyzing clarity. The man sleeping next to her wasn't just a liar, he was a stranger. In that silence, the trust didn't just break, it evaporated. Elin Nordegren was not a woman to crumble in the face of disaster. The betrayal was total, but Elin needed absolute confirmation. In a move of cold fury, she didn't wake him immediately. Instead, she typed a message to Ukatel from Tiger's phone. She wrote something casual, something only Tiger would say. Ukatel replied almost instantly, thinking she was speaking to her lover. That reply was the final nail in the coffin. What happened next destroyed the carefully curated image of the Zen golfer forever. Elin woke him up. The confrontation was explosive. Tiger, hazy from the medication, couldn't spin his way out of the text messages staring him in the face. He panicked. He scrambled out of the house, shoeless, fleeing the consequences of his own making. Elin followed, grabbing a golf club, a symbol of his success now turned into a weapon of domestic reckoning. Tiger jumped into his 2009 Cadillac Escalade. In his state, he had no business behind the wheel. He drove out of the driveway, swerving wildly. He clipped a hedge, smashed over a fire hydrant, and careened across the street, finally slamming into a neighbor's tree. The airbags didn't deploy, suggesting a low-speed crash, but the impact was violent enough to knock him unconscious. The ruckus was loud enough to cause disturbance in the neighborhood, especially that late. Neighbors Jarius Adams and Kimberly Harris heard the impact. When they rushed outside, they found Tiger lying in the street, unresponsive. Elin was hovering over him, frantic. She would later tell police that she used the golf club to smash the rear windows to unlock the car and drag him from the wreckage. When first responders arrived, they found the world's greatest athlete snoring on the pavement, drifting in and out of consciousness, while his wife stood by, the panic in her eyes replacing the rage from moments before. This wasn't just a fender bender, it was the start of a siege. Woods was rushed to Health Central Hospital, treated for facial lacerations, and released, but the silence he tried to maintain in the following days was deafening. He refused to speak to state troopers, canceling interviews 3 days in a row. He was eventually issued a simple ticket for careless driving, a $164 fine for an event that would cost him millions in endorsements. The crash broke the dam. The Mistress Parade began almost immediately. It started with the cocktail waitress from Los Angeles, then the Vegas club manager, then the porn star. The count of alleged affairs ballooned from 1 to 3, then 10, then over 100. Gossip sites became the primary source for hard news, bypassing the sports networks that had protected his legacy for so long. Through it all, the media painted Elin as the naive trophy wife, blindsided by the genius athlete. That's the wrong read. She wasn't just oblivious. She was fiercely loyal. She was a fortress trying to keep the walls standing around her family. She had defended him, believed him, and tried to save him, right up until the moment the evidence on that glowing screen made it impossible. That night didn't just end a marriage, it ended the facade. You can't really appreciate how hard Tiger fell that night unless you remember how high he stood. Before the smashed glass and the angry text messages, there was a fairy tale. Or at least, that's what we thought we were watching. To understand the ending, we have to go back to the beginning. The perfect lie. The origin story of Tiger and Elin isn't the cliché of a superstar picking a model out of a lineup. It began in 2001, in the quiet periphery of the golf world. Elin Nordegren wasn't a star chaser, nor was she a gold digger looking for a payday. She was a nanny working for Swedish golfer Jesper Parnevik. She was shy, studious, and fiercely private, traits that made her almost immune to the gravitational pull of Tiger Woods' celebrity. When they first crossed paths, Tiger was instantly interested. He was the most famous man on the planet, accustomed to the world bending to his will. But Elin didn't bend. She initially declined his advances. She had a boyfriend at the time, and more importantly, she was wary of the chaotic fishbowl lifestyle that came with being Mrs. Woods. She made him wait. She made him chase. She eventually agreed to a date just to get him to stop asking. This dynamic is crucial to understanding the tragedy. Elin didn't fall for the fame. She fell for the man who promised he could protect her from it. By November 2003, during a sunset trip to the Shamwari Game Reserve in South Africa, the chase was over. Tiger proposed. A year later, they cemented their status as the American monarchy of sport. The wedding took place at the ultra-exclusive Sandy Lane Resort in Barbados. It was a spectacle of wealth and secrecy, costing a reported $1.5 million. Tiger didn't just book a room. He reportedly rented out the entire hotel to ensure no prying eyes could witness the nuptials. This was the peak of the illusion. He was the king of sport, and she was his silent, elegant queen. To the public, they were untouchable. The narrative was perfect, the wild prodigy tamed by the wholesome Swedish girl. For the next 5 years, the facade hardened into what looked like reality. They built a domestic empire. They welcomed their daughter, Sam Alexis, in 2007, and their son, Charlie Axel, in 2009. While Tiger was dominating the PGA Tour, Elin was retreating further into domestic life, focusing on motherhood while pursuing a psychology degree at Rollins College. The world was sold a specific image. We saw the commercials of a smiling Tiger, the family man, the devoted husband. We saw the photos of them on the deck of his yacht, ironically named Privacy. We bought into the idea that Tiger Woods had conquered life just as effectively as he had conquered Augusta National. But the irony is sickening in retrospect. If you overlay the timeline of these happy family milestones with the timeline that emerged after the crash, the picture distorts. While he was cutting the cake at that $1.5 million wedding, the seeds of infidelity were already being sown. While Woods was posing for photos with his newborn children, he was managing a roster of mistresses that outrivaled a football team. The golden couple was a fabrication. Elin was living in a love story, studying psychology and raising their children, believing she had found a partner who valued privacy as much as she did. Tiger, meanwhile, was living the opposite. The higher they climbed, the more fragile the structure became. And on that Thanksgiving night, the perfect lie finally ran out of truth. The fallout. After the crash, the silence in the Woods household was deafening. While Tiger eventually checked into rehab for addiction and lost major sponsors like AT&T and Gatorade, the real collapse was happening behind closed doors. The months following Thanksgiving weren't just a PR crisis. They were the slow, painful death of a marriage. The trust hadn't just been damaged. It had been incinerated. Elin reportedly tried to process what was happening, but the sheer scale of the deception made reconciliation impossible. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a double life. The realization set in that the man she married didn't actually exist. By the summer of 2010, it was clear there was no going back. On August 23, 2010, the end officially arrived.
sad chapter for Tiger Woods. His 6-year marriage to Elin Nordegren is now officially over.
Elin has handled everything to do with this awful episode of Tiger's infidelities with incredible grace.
It didn't happen on a golf course or at a press conference, but in a quiet room at the Bay County Circuit Court in Panama City, Florida. The proceedings were incredibly private. There were no cameras, just a finalized document that legally dissolved the golden couple. The terms of the divorce revealed exactly who Elin was. She didn't fight for the yachts or the trophies, she fought for Sam and Charlie. It revealed just how much Elin prioritized her children over revenge. They agreed to a shared parenting plan, ensuring Tiger would remain an active father despite the wreckage of the marriage. They even released a joint statement that was surprisingly graceful, saying, "We are sad that our marriage is over, and we wish each other the very best for the future." However, what actually caught the public's attention more was the financial split. While the public speculated wild numbers up to $750 million, the reality was different. Reliable reports indicate Elin received a settlement between $100 million and $110 million. But that money came with strings attached. It was widely reported that the settlement included a strict confidentiality clause. Elin essentially agreed to silence. She was barred from ever speaking publicly about the specific details of Tiger's affairs. She took the money, and she took back her identity, formally restoring her name to Elin Maria Pernilla Nordegren.
Court documents, the two say their marriage is irretrievably broken, and Elin Woods asked that her maiden name be restored. Elin is expected to get about $100 million. The two reportedly revised their prenuptial agreement after the scandal broke.
This is where the world expected her to turn bitter. We're used to seeing high-profile divorces turn into messy public battles. People expected a tell-all book or a reality show. Elin didn't do any of that. She took her settlement and stayed quiet, but she did make one very loud statement. A new chapter. In 2011, a year after the divorce was final, Elin bought a property in Seminole Landing, a super-exclusive gated community in North Palm Beach. She paid $12.25 million for it. It came with a historic 1920s mansion that most people would have killed to live in. But Elin didn't want the history. She wanted a fresh start. So she bulldozed it. Now, technically, the official reason was termites. She claimed the structure wasn't up to code. But come on, you don't buy a $12 million house just to realize it has bugs unless you're looking for an excuse to wipe the slate clean. This was an expensive message to the world. She was done living in the past. In its place, she built a fortress. And we're not talking about a regular rich person house. She spent 3 years building a custom British West Indies-style estate that spanned nearly 26,000 square feet. This place was insane. It had 11 bedrooms, 15 bathrooms, and a 3-story Swarovski crystal chandelier that hung by the main staircase looking like a frozen waterfall. It had a home theater, a gym, a wine cellar, and retractable glass walls that opened the living room right up to the ocean. She even built a pool with a water slide for the kids. It was a sanctuary designed for a life without Tiger, and once it was built, she effectively ghosted the media. The paparazzi who had been hunting her for 2 years suddenly had nothing to shoot. But while everyone assumed she was just sitting behind her gates enjoying the billionaire lifestyle, Elin was actually doing something much more grounded. She went back to school. She enrolled at Rollins College. She wasn't just auditing art classes to pass the time either. She was a single mom in her 30s, sitting in lecture halls with 19-year-olds, taking notes and writing papers. Rather, she studied one of the most intuitive courses, psychology. After living through one of the most complex, public, and humiliating psychological breakdowns in sports history, she decided to spend her time studying the human mind. It's hard not to read into that. She wasn't just getting a degree, she was looking for answers. She wanted to understand the mechanics of the chaos she had just survived. And just in her own resilient Elin style, she graduated with a 3.96 GPA.
The 2014 outstanding graduating senior is Elin Nordegren. Elin is a psychology major, graduating today, 3.96 cumulative grade point average.
When she finally broke her silence in 2014, it wasn't on a reality show or in a tabloid spread. It was at the podium of her own graduation, giving the commencement speech. She even joked about the media storm she had survived. But the point she made was serious. Education was the one thing no one could take away from her. She spent her millions on knowledge, not just luxury. Eventually, she decided it was time to turn the page again. In 2020, she sold that massive 26,000 square foot fortress. She listed it for almost $50 million, but eventually sold it for $28.6 million to Russell Weiner, the guy who created Rockstar Energy Drink. She downsized to a new home in the Old Palm Golf Club nearby, a 13,500 square feet property that cost nearly $10 million. It's got 6 bedrooms, a teppanyaki grill, and faces a pond. But the move signaled something important. She wasn't the scorned ex-wife building a defensive fortress anymore. She didn't need the 11 bedrooms or the Swarovski waterfall. She was just Elin. She had rebuilt her house, rebuilt her education, and most importantly, rebuilt her life on her own terms. By 2019, Elin Nordegren had conquered the real estate market and the academic world. She was wealthy, brilliant, and private. But the tabloids were starving. They wanted to know, who is the man that could possibly fill Tiger Woods' shoes? Her return to dating was cautious. In 2011, just a year after the divorce, she was linked to Jamie Dingman, an emerging markets investor and the son of a billionaire. From the public's perception, he was a safe harbor, wealthy, private, and described by friends as a classic all-American gentleman. It was a test run for a normal life, but the timing was wrong. Elin was still in the thick of rebuilding her identity, and friends later said it was simply too soon for anything serious. They split after less than a year. When she was finally ready to try again, she found stability right in her own backyard. For a few years, she dated Chris Klein, a coal mining mogul who lived right near her in Seminole Landing. This relationship made sense. He was older, incredibly wealthy, and understood the value of privacy. It was a quiet, stable partnership that kept her out of the headlines. But eventually, the spark faded, and they drifted apart. So, the question remained, who could possibly fill Tiger Woods' shoes? After testing the waters with billionaires and businessmen, Elin didn't look for another tycoon. She found someone who was arguably the anti-Tiger. His name is Jordan Cameron. Generally, it looked like Elin was slipping back into her old world. Jordan was a professional athlete, a Pro Bowl tight end who had played for the Browns and the Dolphins. He was young, famous, and successful. But if you peel back the layers, Jordan Cameron wasn't just another jock. He was the philosophical opposite of her ex-husband. Tiger Woods is a man defined by obsession. He played until his back fused, his knees shattered, and his personal life imploded. He was a machine, built for dominance, often at the expense of his own health and happiness. Jordan Cameron is the guy who walked away. In 2017, At the peak of his career and only 28 years old, Jordan retired from the NFL. He didn't have a career-ending injury in the traditional sense. He had a realization. After suffering 4 concussions in 6 years, he looked at the data, looked at his young son from a previous relationship, and decided that being a present, healthy father was more important than fame or a paycheck. He told ESPN, "I can't risk my mental health in the future. I want to be there for my son." Tiger sacrificed his family for the game. Jordan sacrificed the game for his family. But the most impressive part of this relationship wasn't the romance. It was the tradecraft. Elin Nordegren, one of the most photographed women of the 2000s, managed to date Jordan for over a year without anyone knowing. But she wasn't done yet. In 2019, she pulled off the ultimate mastermind move. In June that year, rumors started swirling that Elin might be pregnant. The paparazzi scrambled. They expected a big announcement, a magazine cover, or a leaked photo sold for 6 figures. Instead, Elin just stepped outside. She showed up at her son Charlie's flag football game wearing a black tank top, looking very pregnant. No press release, no interview. She just lived her life. It turned out she was effectively days away from giving birth. She had hidden almost an entire pregnancy from the media. Controlling a narrative effectively in this digital age is indeed a feat. In an era of social media and camera phones, Elin kept her biggest secret completely safe until she was ready to show it. It proved that she hadn't just survived the media circus of 2009, she had learned how to beat it. She and Jordan welcomed their son Arthur in October 2019. But the perfect ending to Elin's story isn't about the baby. It's about a photo that surfaced shortly before. In a final delicious bit of irony, the first time the paparazzi actually got a clear shot of the couple together. They weren't at a red carpet or a nightclub. They were playing golf. Elin was taking a swing, and Jordan was holding a bag. It was the perfect visual metaphor for her new life. She was finally the one playing the game, on her own course, by her own rules. So, where is Elin Nordegren today, 15 years after the crash that defined her? The answer isn't behind a fortress gate or on a private island. It's in the messy, wonderful chaos of a completely realized life. Living the dream. Today, Elin is 44, and she is truly radiant. It's not just the effortless style or the wealth. It's the look of a woman who is completely unbothered. She looks like someone who finally exhaled and decided to live exactly how she always wanted. She found her purpose in her pain. After graduating with her psychology degree, Elin didn't stop there. She became a practicing mental health counselor. This is indeed an incredible journey, taking the public wreckage of her life and turning it into a profession dedicated to helping others navigate their own private crises. She took the trauma and built a career helping people find their own foundations. What is even more beautiful is that Elin did not let the trauma of her marriage with Woods stop her from enjoying the happy family life she had always desired. Her house is exactly the loud, bustling place she always dreamed of. She and Jordan Cameron have built a vibrant, blended family. They share 3 children, Arthur, plus 2 more born later, Zeta and Freya. Jordan also has his son, Tristan, from a previous relationship. When you add in her kids with Tiger, Sam, now 16, and Charlie, now 15, and you have a total of 6 children running around the house. A close friend revealed that Elin always wanted a big family, a house filled with noise and love. She is living her sweetest dream, a beautiful testament to resilience and the capacity for new beginnings. But perhaps the most profound part of her journey is the final relationship she forged with Tiger Woods. The world expected lifelong bitterness. We expected them to never speak again. Instead, the final shock of this story is that Elin and Tiger are genuinely best friends. They co-parent seamlessly, prioritizing their shared love for Sam and Charlie above all else. Tiger himself confessed in a 2015 interview that Elin is one of his best friends, emphasizing their constant communication.
Elin never hit me that night or any other night. There has never been an episode of domestic violence in our marriage. Ever.
He said, "We both know that the most important things in our lives are our kids." This wasn't just PR spin, it's an active truth. Earlier this year, this spirit of cooperation was on full display as both Elin and Tiger attended their son Charlie's golf team celebration, beaming with pride as Charlie received his state championship rings. They didn't pose together, maintaining their separate lives, but their presence spoke volumes about their harmonious dynamic. They were also seen together in November, attending Charlie's Florida won a state championship at the Mission Resort Plus Club in Howey in the Hills, Florida. Elin Nordegren's life isn't a footnote to a scandal anymore. Her ultimate victory wasn't the $100 million divorce settlement or the mansion she built. It was the simple, difficult choice to forgive the man who broke her, not for his sake, but for her own. By choosing co-parenting and friendship over bitterness, she finally freed herself from the scandal's shadow, allowing her to step fully into the quiet, happy life she always deserved. So, after all these years, who truly won the breakup? The last laugh. Tiger Woods has spent the last 15 years fighting his body and his past. He went from being golf's greatest force to fighting agonizing injuries, career-stalling arrests, and the constant memory of his downfall. His celebrated comeback Masters victory in 2019 was a moment of redemption, yes, but it was redemption earned through physical pain, repeated surgeries, and years of grinding effort against the relentless pressure of his own legend. He has remained, inescapably, a public figure. His flaws and successes continuously measured and judged in front of the world. Elin Nordegren, by contrast, has spent the last 15 years building a future. She took her pain, studied it, and turned it into a profession as a mental health counselor. She didn't seek fame, she sought stability. She built a life defined by love, education, and family, not headlines. Her partner, Jordan Cameron, is a man who actively chose family wellness over the dangers of a high-profile career. When you look at the two of them today, side by side, the contrast is stark. Tiger Woods still chases trophies, his body constantly betraying him, the public eye never blinking. Elin Nordegren chases the quiet life, prioritizing what matters to her, family. She manages a loving, blended family and holds a graduate degree. She is happy, grounded, and free. She proved the ultimate life lesson. The best revenge isn't anger or bitterness, and it's certainly not another headline. The best revenge is happiness. Elin Nordegren's story is a powerful testament to resilience, showing us that when your world shatters, you can use the pieces to build something far stronger, far more beautiful, and entirely your own. Take a deep breath. She made it. After everything she survived and rebuilt, does Elin Nordegren deserve to be remembered as the real champion of this story? Let us know in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy this video, click on the next video on your screen.